Well, I'm going to put forth a little argument and discussion why I think we're actually going into a major ice age, not even just a severe mini ice age. And I know no scientist, which I'm not a scientist, is going to go out on a limb and say we're going into a major ice age. But it is also known that we are about 500 years late on the long term cycle of major ice ages. So, on average, 90,000 years of a major ice age, and then about 10,000 years of warming. And within that 10,000 years, there are spots where we have mini ice ages. Now, there's a lot of responsible people out there, including John Casey, former scientist from NASA, who no longer with NASA because I guess he's politically incorrect or whatever. I don't know what the deal is, but they're talking, and a lot of Russian scientists are talking about we're going to go into at least a mini ice age that's going to be a severe mini ice age on par with around what happened in the early 1600s. So I'm showing a map here of the extent of glaciation. Now, obviously, glaciation takes hundreds of thousands of years, hundreds of years, or thousands of years to happen. You know, it doesn't happen overnight. But the other side of it is this: that it doesn't take that long to go into enough coldness to start the glaciation. In other words, it might take a period of 20, 25 years. And that's what some people have estimated, whereby summers are gone. In other words, the snow doesn't melt. The summers aren't hot enough to even melt the snow. Now that sounds ludicrous today, but there was a time actually, I think it was in the 1815, the year without a summer, there was a major volcanic eruption on the other side of the world that caused heavy snow to occur in, like, I think it was July in the middle of summer in upstate New York and New England. And it only happened that one year because of this volcanic eruption that blocked out a lot of the sun. And what happened there was that it caused people in New England to go west because they figured, oh my God, we can't put up with this every year, you know, because there was no historical records and nobody knew what the hell happened and why it got that cold. And you know, the United States and was relatively new then. This was 1815, I believe. This is another map of the extent of glaciation. Now, I want to point out something because you're going to see a lot of stuff that the glaciers in Alaska are melting, right? And they'll say, "Well, look, the glaciers are melting in Alaska." Well, during the last severe mini ice age in the 1600s, the glaciers in Alaska were melting, and during the last major ice age over 10,500 years ago, about 11,000 years ago, was like when it was ending, there was not as much glaciation in Alaska as there is today. There's actually, the glaciers in Alaska they started forming about 10,000 years ago or so. So what happens is during a major ice age, yes, the Earth gets colder overall, but the cold spots shift. In other words, the Arctic pole comes south a little bit towards Canada. Well, Canada would be uninhabitable actually if this happened, and most of North America, a lot of North America, and New York was actually, I think, under 2 miles of ice back then. So, anyway, and you're looking over here like Virginia, Kentucky, it's kind of like tundra. That's what the hell is over there. So, and I guess Tennessee would be more like northern Maine or something. God, it was damn cold back then. But that could happen in inside of 20 years. So anyway, and here you're showing the different extent of ice sheets during different periods. Okay, I don't think anybody really knows exactly 100% because at least you could say it didn't go down to North Carolina, South Carolina, whatever. Didn't go that far, but there were ice sheets over New York City. It was finished, man. Now, you're not going to get an ice sheet over New York City inside of 20 years, obviously, but you could drop into the type of temperatures that begin to form these glaciation of ice sheets moving south, which will take thousands of years. because the major ice ages lasted for, on average, a period of 90,000 years. But none of this stuff is pinpoint accurate. It's sort of like the Earth has a pulse, or I don't know if we want to call it a pulse, but there's things that, like an ebb and flow, that happen with the sun's energy that cause this stuff to happen. Now, again, here's another map showing that, Alaska was relatively ice-free during the last major ice age. That's just how it is. Even though there was a lot more ice on the Earth, the polar ice caps were much thicker and a greater extent of land coverage. Alaska was relatively ice-free compared to what it is today. You could actually survive the major ice age being in central Alaska. So, like, people in Alaska sometimes are wondering, gee, we haven't had a winter like this, and look how warm it is. Look at global warming. Yeah, it's happening. Well, that's not exactly what's going on here, because that is exactly the way it plays out. Overall, the Earth gets. See, this is like I just showed several graphs here, or pictorials showing where the ice sheets are, and they pretty much agree with each other. But the ice sheets covered all of Canada, basically, and the Baffin Bay up here was all filled in. That's actually one of the places you really got to watch over here. And it got into like Wisconsin, Michigan, all of New England, pretty much all, New York State, most of Pennsylvania, part of Pennsylvania. So it didn't really. But Alaska got warmer, and as this ice built up, it caused the oceans to go down. So Florida got to be about 400 miles wide. That's really, really wild. And of course, you had the land bridge from, Russia or Asia to North America, right? That's just the reality of the situation, man. So. That's how they lie with the disinformation, because, and also in Antarctica today, the ice is growing, but you'll see pictures of ice falling off into the water. Well, part of that is because the ice is growing, but then there's other time. Antarctica has the most volcanic activity out of any continent on this Earth. So sometimes when you're seeing these ice sheets melt in Antarctica, it's due to volcanic activity. Because during the major, when we go into these severe mini ice ages, there usually is a lot more volcanic activity and a lot more earthquakes. And by the way, when the New Madrid line went, which is the one over there by the Mississippi, that was during a mini ice age in the 1800s. And some predict that when we go into this next major mini ice age, the New Madrid line could go, and it would cause all the pipelines to burst and all this garbage. We'd be cooked. So let's look at a couple of graphs here. So 100-year forecast. Now, this basically, like every 11 years, there's, well, I guess it says it best. I was going to say 11 to 12 and a half, 13 years, but this says 10 and a half to 15-year cycles. The cycles aren't perfect. There's a major ice age cycle, which is approximately 90,000 years of major ice age, followed by 10,000 to 11,000 years of relative warming. Then within that, there is about roughly a 208-year cycle that has mini ice ages within the relative 10,000 to 11,000 year warming period. Then within that, there's these 10 and a half to 15 year cycles. Some people say they're 11 to 12 and a half, 13 years. I don't know. It's nobody really. They're not perfect. It's like they happen, but they're not as accurate. Like you can't pinpoint them like you're going to plug in a number in a calculator. It could be 10 and a half to 15 year cycles. I guess it's best to say that, because the mini ice ages are 208 years, and then you got these 11-year cycles within that. But we're coming up to three things. First, we're coming up to the first 11-year cycle that's going into the mini ice age of the. We're going into the first 11-year cycle of the 208-year cycle, which is going to be more like the 400-year cycle, which is going to be, in other words, more like a severe mini ice age that happened around 1615. And we're also 500 years late on going into the major ice age of the 10,000 to 11,000 year warming period right at the very end of that. And it might take 20 years just to go right into a major ice age. So it's a very strong possibility that, I'm not a scientist, so I have no scientific credentials on the line here, but I'm looking at what the scientists are saying. That's why I'm going to say it, because I got nothing to lose. I mean, what are they going to say? Hey, what, you got a PhD? Okay, I know I don't have a PhD, but I'm telling you, I looked at what the PhDs were saying, and the scientists, and everybody else, and I could see that there's a pretty damn strong possibility that this last mini ice age, that this next mini ice age, severe mini ice age that many are predicting, is actually going to go right directly into the major ice age. And we're at the very, very beginning of this. And what the biggest problem is, it's not ice. It's cold. The real problem is lack of food production for the record number of people we have on this earth. Now, it's possible we've had, because the earth is actually billions of years old, and really, we don't know how long mankind has really been on this earth. I mean, there's stories of fables of Atlantis that might have been around during the major ice age that was, not covered up in water. They found sophisticated cities in the bay off the country of India. They were in water, and they were below the water. They found pyramids off the, in not far from Cuba, I believe. They were under the ocean floor. They found pyramids. Well, they might be mountains. They might be pyramid mountains. But they found pyramid mountains, or maybe pyramids, real pyramids, man-made pyramids, whether they're natural or not. They look real, in Antarctica. And that may be that there were sophisticated civilizations on this earth and they got wiped out by global catastrophes. Because if we went into a major ice age in 20 years, I guarantee you most people on this earth are going to be dead because of lack of food. Right? Sorry, YouTube. We gotta bring this out because, I'm not trying to scare anybody. If you know about it, get your greenhouses going here, man, because or you got to move the centers of food production somewhere else. There's a lot of land out there that nobody's living on anyway, so you know what I mean. There's a lot of land out there. Now this, you got the little ice age. This chart's a little bit skewed because when it gets over to the recent time, it kind of condenses and it leaves out the. See, this was 1815 right here. This little dip right here. Down here, Mount Tabura, Indonesia. That's when that went off. And this little ice age where they're showing this over this long period of time over here, there was actually two dips. But I guess this is giving you a big long average. Maybe this is kind of like used a little bit like algorithms to smooth out these curves. But here, we have 1,200 years before Christ here, or BC, or whatever, before the Common Era, or before Christ, or after the Common Era, or Anno Domini, whatever you want to use, right? Very warm. Actually, a lot warmer than it is today. During the Hebrew Exodus from Egypt, it was warmer back then than it is today, and they didn't have cars back then, right? It's one of these things they don't want to let you know, man. This dip over here during the Dark Ages, what do you want to call it? This was also a time when they had the bubonic plague. It caused the Roman Empire. This went along with the Roman Empire going down. This also was around with the bubonic plague, I think. And empires come and go with these mini ice ages. If we had global warming, That would be a good thing, actually. There'd be a lot more agricultural land out there, man. Even though some of the cities might go underwater, it would actually be good for humanity. Global cooling is the stuff that kills off people and causes diseases, and everybody dies and all this kind of stuff, right? Now here's the sunspot activity over the decades. They smoothed it out. And this goes back, zero is the time of Christ, time of the common era, if you want to call it that or whatever. And you got after the common era, or Anno Domini, AD. And today, you look at, this is not a chart of weather or like temperature. This is a chart of sunspot activity. You see, we've been getting a little warmer here recently from like 1950 on due to sunspot activity that was increasing. Now, sunspot activity actually leveled off and now we're going down again. But the global warming trends that were going on since about 1950 to like the early 2000s, that really happened, except for one time. I'd say there was a time in around 77, within those 11-year cycles, we had some blizzards and stuff, cold times. But the overall trend from 1950 to the like say 2003, there was more sunspot activity. That was causing the global warming. And the sunspots, they look like dark spots if you're looking through like a telescope and you're looking at the visible light. Now, don't look at the sun with a telescope. You'll burn your eyes out. But if you look at the sunspots under non-visible light, like either on one side of the spectrum infrared or on the other side of the spectrum ultraviolet, they look extremely bright. Those sunspots that are dark to like the visible light that man sees with your regular eyes, which you're not supposed to look at it, but say you're looking at it through a dark filter so you can see it. Those sunspots are actually hot spots. They look dark because the part that's putting out the energy is actually in a spectrum of light that is beyond what you can see. It's either on one side or the other side, the ultraviolet or the infrared. The infrared being the longer waves. So here we got the Greenland ice core for the last 10,000 years. And you can see, I kind of like this chart because you could see that, the temperature is dropping. It's dropping, So we got there's the little ice age back there. Here's the medieval warming, the Roman warming, the Minoan warming, and all that garbage, right? But, this 208-year cycle or 400-year cycle or 416-year cycle, it ain't perfect, as you can see. But you got to look at the trend line. It looks like we're getting ready to drop off the side of the cliff and go into the major ice age to me, because we're actually about 500 years late on a typical, because they've been following, they know every single major ice age and warming period going back like a couple million years from ice core samples and drilling into the ocean, looking at what type of life was more abundant in the ocean, which they could tell from what type of temperatures were around, right? From what type of life was in the bottom of the ocean. So we can very easily be going into the major ice age. Now, I know no scientist wants to say that crap too easy. Like, they want to say major mini ice age. And they say maybe there's an outside chance we're going into a major ice age. But I'm looking at these charts and I'm saying to myself, this could be the beginning of the major ice age, because we're going to be into... nobody's 100% sure how long this mini ice age is going to last. And this 10.5 to 11-year cycle thing is kind of imprecise within the mini ice age. But the bottom of the mini ice age, most people are predicting between the late 2030s and 2050. But when I'm looking at these things, I'm thinking to myself, with the major chart of what's going on over the last 10,000, 11,000 years, this last dip could be the last dip going into the major ice age. And you look at like mankind today. We got super sophisticated compared to what things were, just 50 years ago, and then 150 years ago, and 500 years ago. It's like all the technology's been coming out in the last 20, 30 years. And I got a feeling all this stuff's been developed before. I swear to God, I think mankind's been on this earth a long time, modern mankind, and it might I've seen stuff on where they've showed it's. I know it's controversial, but they've been showing that there's ancient roadways that probably been around millions of years old. Roadways in Spain, in present-day Turkey, which means people were traveling with wheeled vehicles or carts or whatever the hell it was a hell of a long time ago. So who the hell knows what was developed way back when? And if everything gets destroyed, everybody's going to go right back to living a very primitive life, and everything we got today is kind of based upon somebody else knowing something. If you don't have all the interlocking pieces, everything falls apart. Everything's going to get a hell of a lot simpler. That's maybe how some of this stuff gets lost when people are too busy just trying to survive, right? I don't know. That's what I keep thinking might happen here, man. I really do think this shit's going to happen. It might happen, but it's not. And it might happen within the next 20 years. And you know what the problem is there? Lack of food. So here we're into, see, this is kind of like an older chart, but we're going to go right around 2019, 2020. It's going to be the bottom of the next solar cycle. Now, this last solar cycle, it didn't seem like nothing in the northeast United States, but if you look out west, man, they had some serious snows out there, and as a matter of fact, those snows filled up all the reservoirs out in California with their 1,000-year drought. As a matter of fact, up in the Sierra Nevada, when they were measuring the snow up there, they had these snowpack instruments, sticks in the ground. I think the highest they went up to was 16 feet. And the snow was way the hell over that. So it was like a record. But that was enough snowpack and snow melt off to fill up all the California reservoirs to overfill from a record 1,000-year drought. Which is another indication when you're having all these changes in weather that the clock is flipping over to something totally different. In other words, the weather clock, if we want to call it that. And I think we're actually going not just into a mini ice age, we might be on the beginning of a major ice age, and that this mini major ice age that many are predicting, a mini major ice age or a major mini ice age, is actually going to be the beginning of the major ice age, which is going to last 90,000 years. But mankind was around, I think, in sophisticated cities even during the last major ice age, because I think that fable with Atlantis is legit. It's not a fable. I think it's reality. It went underwater when the sea caps melt. A lot of the ice glaciers melted. And also, like I said, they found things off the coast of India with sophisticated large metropolitan cities under the water, which would also explain all these fables throughout history about major floods, like Noah's flood in the Bible. But every culture in the world's got stories about major floods, which could be about when the major glaciers were melting during the end of the last major ice age, because most of the earth wasn't really totally covered in ice. There was a lot of places that were inhabitable, but the coastline was way out there. In other words, Florida would have been 400 miles wide, and if they ever, maybe there's stuff even off the coast of Florida that is ancient civilizations that they don't know about, that because Florida would have been, during the last major ice age, would have been easily inhabitable. It might have been colder, but it wouldn't have been ice. It definitely wouldn't have been ice. But the coastline would have been out there for another 50 miles or so. So, here we got the sunspot observations. Now, what they're expecting, that we're going to go into at least what you call the Maunder minimum. The Maunder minimum was like, the 1600s. That was really cold. And nobody really knows what the hell happened in the United States back then. I mean, yeah, there's a few people here, but they didn't start the Weather Service, I think, till like the late 1800s. And That was with the advent of the telegraph, where they could start reporting temperatures and all this kind of garbage. Nobody knows what the hell was going on back then. We do know that in Europe, though, you were able to walk from Denmark to like Scandinavia across permanent ice pack back during the 1600s, and they used to have permanent hotels built on the ice pack where people could stay and for traveling, and it was just permanent ice pack all year round, man. So if we go into that, there's gonna be a hell of a lot freaking less ships going on over there. That, well, maybe they'll be driving trucks. I don't know. Who knows? But in the Dalton minimum, which happened during the 1800s, that was the time of the Carrington event, which caused a big EMP, which fried all the telegraphs, which could totally fry our total infrastructure. Good question. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I do think maybe. And here we have the glacier interglacier cycles over the past 450,000 years. Now you notice this thing is not, nothing's absolutely precise. They just tell you there's like average 90,000 years of glaciers. Then there's about 10 to 11,000 years of relatively warm. Then within that 10,000 years of relatively warm, there's like 200, just a little over 200 year to 400 year cycles. Some they vary. Where they have mini ice ages. Then within that, they at least in the last few hundred years or so, about every 10 and a half to 15 years, there's cycles within the medium cycles of the mini ice ages. There's other average of 11-year cycles in there. So we're at the beginning of a strong mini ice age at the least, coming into the bottom of the first 11-year cycle, which is going to bottom out around 2020 or 2019. 2019 and 2021, because nobody really knows if that cycle's 11 years, 10 and a half years, 12 and a half years, 13 years, 15 years. But, it's roughly about that. Because when you're looking at this chart, I mean, they know exactly when the glaciation happened, when the interglaciation happened. It's like, and here we are, interglaciation, right? That's a pretty long time for having interglaciation nice and warm, right? I mean, way back here, like 130,000 years ago, during this time, I don't know, there could have been some advanced civilizations on this earth, and who the hell knows what happened. And maybe they got so advanced, like, we are today, that we think we're going to go to Mars or something like that, and we're going to inhabit Mars or something. Who the hell knows? Maybe these people, there was a lot of people on the earth back then, and maybe they developed into, I don't know, maybe they went somewhere. I don't know. It's a theory. I have no idea. I do know that I'm not into this UFO alien stuff, but it's a possibility. It's probably true though, because I could tell you one little damn story out there. Jackie Gleason believes in aliens, and I'll tell you why. Richard M. Nixon, the president at the time, he took Jackie Gleason, the guy that did the Jackie Gleason show, and that, what the hell was that? The comedy show with, I don't know, he was playing like a bus driver and stuff like that, and he had Ralph on there, whatever his name, Norman, whatever his name was. Nixon took Jackie Gleason to Florida, to a military base, and he went way down below the surface of the earth, on this elevator, and he took him into this area, and there was like an alien down there that was like on a deep freeze. That's what Jackie Gleason said after he told people about it. He says, after that, he said, I believe in that shit. But who the hell knows? Maybe, I don't know, maybe there was other shit on this planet that back then and they left. I don't know. Who knows? I don't know. I don't want to go down that rabbit trail, but it tells you that, look how much we developed in the last 10,000 years. And this has been happening on this earth for, this earth is like billions of years old, actually. And when you're thinking just even a couple million years, you're talking about 20 interglacial warming periods that lasted about 10 to 11,000 years each. Who the hell knows what kind of life was on this earth back then? Who knows? I don't know. But anyway, here we got, if you're looking at the trends here, cycle 23 with the sunspot, cycle 24. Cycle 24 at the peak of the height here was nowhere near as high as cycle 23. So it's like the cycles, there's less and less sunspots. And actually, I should really call, they're not, they look like dark spots if you're looking through at the naked eye. And they don't look at the sun with the naked eye with a telescope, but they're actually, if you're looking at them, like I said, they're actually power, they're energy power, just energy coming out of those spots. If you're looking at it through another light spectrum like ultraviolet light or infrared light on both sides of the non-visible human eye sight, visible eye light that the human eyesight can see, you can see they look very, very bright. Those sunspots are actually the sun putting out loads of energy. So the more sunspots you got, the warmer the Earth gets. Lack of sunspots means the Earth gets colder. So this last cycle we had on the 11-year cycle, it went up and nowhere near as many spots as the last time. And if you look back at this 11-year cycle, the winter of '77, when we had that huge blizzard that clobbered the air, all of the Northeast and stuff, that was one of the low spots where solar activity. Also, 95 and 96 was another one too. And I think 2008 was another one around there or something like that. There was another big bunch of snowstorms and stuff. I mean, it's not perfect science, and it doesn't necessarily go in a specific region of the Earth exactly, but overall, you'll see a lot more severe winters when there's lack of sunspots, and it also affects the price of food. The price of wheat goes up a lot. There's a correlation between the price of wheat and the number of sunspots out there. No sunspots means the price of wheat goes up. So the price of wheat's going to go way the hell up. The price of wheat's already going up. So anyway, but it's my guess, and I'm going to put this out, not that I'm trying to be, and obviously you can tell I'm not trying to talk smart or trying to convince you. I'm talking very much like a blue-collar worker guy for a reason. But I do have the knowledge of a lot of what's going on from people that are experts in this field. And I think they're afraid to say what they really think. They're saying that they're warning us that we're going into a strong mini ice age. That's going to be on par with the Maunder minimum of the 1600s, very likely. But everything else I'm looking at that they're not saying when they're presenting all this information is telling me we're probably at the beginning of a major ice age. In a major ice age, like the glaciers don't freaking go flying at us in no time flat, right? It takes thousands of years or hundreds, at least centuries, for ice to start building up. But as far as the temperature drop that causes this to happen, it can happen within 20 years. And I'm glad to see it didn't get down to Tennessee, so probably cold as a witch's tit up there, but anyway, I got to get some land over there in South Carolina too, man. Florida, South Carolina, Tennessee, and I'll be all right. All Confederate land. Anyway, Yankees, you better watch out, man. You're going to be under ice here pretty soon. Anyway, so, well, I think this is a good chart like this because it shows Alaska, not to get Alaskan, like I said, Alaskan glaciers are going to melt during a severe mini ice age, which sounds, ludicrous when I'm saying that. Why would they melt? Because the overall global temperatures go down, but the pockets of coldness shift on this Earth during severe mini ice ages and major ice ages. The pockets of coldness change because the currents of air and the jet stream and everything changes. And then once this starts building up, because if you actually look in the wintertime, if you want to look at it like, we're going to have a severe winter or not, they always look at the Siberian, Russia, Siberia, they always look at the Russian-Siberian snowpack as a part, it was one of the factors to predict how cold it's going to be in, Canada, Northeast United States, and North Central United States, because the cold air comes over from Siberia over the Arctic, and they call that Siberian Express. So the more snowpack you have, it's like putting ice in an ice box. You know what I mean? It keeps all the other air colder. And the only thing that's going to warm this crap up is not driving around a bunch of SUVs. It's going to be the sun is going to have to start putting out more energy again, and it does that whenever it feels like, because it's like on this. It's been on this timetable, doing this stuff now for a couple billion years, and we do know, at least we do know, going back millions of years, what the cycles are between the major ice ages and the interglacial periods. Now, they don't run precise. None of this stuff is actually pinpoint precise. So, what I'm throwing out a guesstimate here that I think we might be going into a major ice age. I could be off by 150 freaking years, right? But I don't know. I don't know. And I think these scientists that really understand this stuff are afraid to stick their neck out and say that there's a damn good chance we're going into a major ice age. And that doesn't mean we're going to get ice glaciers right away, but it means we're going to get cold enough to start the glaciers, whereby you're not going to even have all the snow melt in the summertime in the northeastern United States, like in New England and stuff. It's going to start creeping down. And once it starts building up with snowpack, it's going to get colder and colder and colder, and it's not going to reverse the trend until the sun starts putting out a lot more energy again. That might take 90,000 freaking years. But look at the bright side. Florida will be 400 miles wide, and if you bought some land that's underwater for like $1 an acre, hey, it might be a good investment later on if this starts, about 1,000 years, if you live that long. And anyway, I'm just kidding on that. Yeah, because you know how real estate is. Real estate is only worth, what you think it's worth. Anyway, over and out, and I just figured I'd put this out here for food for thought. It's not a serious video, and don't underestimate my intelligence. Actually, I talk like this on purpose. You ever hear like you ever see on television, like, I'm a dude, okay, so obviously, but you ever see like a female that talks like a dumb blonde and she's smart as a whip, and she talks like a dumb blonde for a reason? Well, it's a game, and there's a reason I talk like this working class, because it's a game too. I actually do understand a lot of this stuff, and what I put out here is very serious, and you got to think about food production. And, the way you can grow food where it's cold is greenhouses. But nobody's thinking about growing food, you know what I mean? Gotta order it online. Yeah, right. These big corporations are run by the elite, and you know what the elite think? The elite think there's too many people on this earth, right? I mean, these big corporations that produce the farms, that are behind the farms that produce all the food. You know what I mean? You better think for yourself. So that's why I'm putting this out here. It's just kind of a warning to you, not to scare anybody. And don't have any Darth Vader movie music in the background or nothing like that. But follow that other logic. The big corporations, which includes the big farming corporations, are run by the elite. There's not that many farmers anymore. Everything's a big freaking government racket now, or it's a big corporation racket. And you know what? The powers behind the scenes. You remember that thing that was the Georgia Guidestones? What's it say in Commandment 1? Keep the population below 500 million globally. Yeah. Wonder how they're going to do that. And I think they know this is coming up. I think they do. If I know it, how the hell could they not know it? I mean, I know that at least we're at a minimum, we're going to have a very strong mini ice age that's going to greatly curtail the growing seasons, and that's going to mean there's not enough food for all the people on this earth. Well, we might be going into a major ice age, but that's still not a catastrophic problem if you know that it's coming up and you need to, do farming in areas where it's going to be warm enough, right? And once the ice sheets build up and all this kind of crap, there's going to be a lot more land exposed, like off the coast of the United States to farm and all this garbage, right? So, which will be fertile land because, it'll be the remains of all the the life that was on the bottom of the ocean would be there, and the soil would be real rich, and it'd be rich farmland. You know what I mean? But the thing is, you got to adjust for this crap. You got to adjust for it. And considering that there's only a few big. Everything now with farming is a big corporation that's running all the garbage that's feeding everybody. Well, it could be a problem, man. So you got to do stuff on your own if you want to survive. That's why I'm putting out this little warning video here. I ain't trying to scare nobody, but I think it's legit all the way.